Say hi to the sharks, my daughter-in-law whispered as she gave me one sharp push. The ocean swallowed my scream before my son even looked up. For one surreal heartbeat, I saw the Massachusetts coastline gleaming in the distance. The yacht, my son's pale face, the sky too blue for murder. Then the water hit like glass, turning solid. At 67, with a brand new titanium hip and a heart still half broken from losing my husband Robert, I never thought family would be the thing that killed me. Let me back up. A few hours earlier, it had been an ordinary Tuesday, the kind that begins with optimism and ends with tragedy on the evening news. David, my only son, had called personally. That should have been my first red flag. He rarely called. His assistant usually handled it. "Mom," he'd said warmly, "we want to celebrate your recovery. Just the three of us. A little cruise, sunshine, champagne. You deserve it." 6 weeks after hip surgery, I was still wobbly but desperate for connection. Since Robert's death 2 years ago, the house had felt like a museum of everything I'd lost. I told myself David's invitation meant reconciliation. Maybe we'd find a way to be a family again. So I dressed carefully. Navy wrap dress, pearl earrings, my late husband's old silk scarf. Robert always said the color brought out my eyes. I took a taxi to the marina, rehearsing small talk that might bridge the distance between us. The yacht gleamed like a magazine spread, 42 feet of luxury I hadn't known they could afford. "Isn't she beautiful?" David said, kissing my cheek a little too quickly. "Cost less than some people's condos." Some people's, he meant mine, the one I'd moved into after signing over our Beacon Hill house to him. A fresh start, he'd called it then. Vanessa appeared from the deck, flawless in designer sunglasses. "Mrs. Harrison?" she said with that smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Champagne?" She poured before I could answer, her phone tilted at an odd angle, filming me as if by accident. The first hour was almost peaceful. The water sparkled, seagulls traced lazy circles overhead, and for a fleeting moment, I believed this really was a celebration. Then David began asking questions, casual at first. "How's your will looking, Mom? Still the same setup? You know probate can get messy." He refilled my glass, a little too generously. Vanessa laughed softly, pretending to scroll. Her camera lens caught my reflection in the screen, and then I saw it, a folder on the table marked "Power of Attorney, Pending." My throat tightened. They'd handled those papers during my hospital stay. They'd said it was temporary, just while you recover. That was when I felt the first true chill of fear. "David," I said quietly, "I think I'd like to go back to shore." He didn't meet my eyes. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Mom." His tone shifted, hard, rehearsed. Vanessa stepped closer. "You've been having memory issues, remember? The doctors agree." My mind raced. Memory issues? I was sharper than both of them combined. They had planned this, the documents, the filming, the way my financial advisor had stopped returning my calls. They were building a case to have me declared incompetent. "You're both insane," I whispered. David's smile was almost kind. "Sign the papers, Mom. Make it easy." "And if I don't?" Vanessa finally smiled for real. "Then it's a tragic accident. Elderly woman, too much medication, slips overboard. Happens all the time." I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised alone after Robert spent years building our company, the boy I'd taught to swim in the shallow end of Cape Anne's beaches. Now, he was the man nodding while his wife plotted my death. I stood slowly, hip aching but mind razor sharp. "Go to hell," I said. That's when Vanessa moved behind me, voice soft as silk. Say hi to the sharks. The shove wasn't violent, just deliberate, calculated. My body lurched forward, one step, another, and then nothing but sky, salt, and the deafening silence of betrayal. Cold slammed into me like concrete. Instinct took over. Kick. Breathe. Survive. Somewhere above, David shouted my name for the cameras. But even as the ocean closed over my head, I realized what they were really drowning: their conscience. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Now, let's talk about what happened after the sharks were supposed to finish the job. They thought I'd drown quietly, but the ocean has a funny way of spitting back what it doesn't want. Salt scorched my throat before I even broke the surface. The water was darker than I expected, thick, endless, the kind that doesn't forgive. My hips screamed every time I kicked, but instinct, years of morning laps with Robert, kept me moving. Stay above it. Breathe. Count. The ocean rolled like a living creature, pulling me under, then spitting me out again. I caught a glimpse of the yacht's white hull cutting away toward the horizon. My son's voice was faint now, echoing through the wind. "Mom! Mom!" He sounded almost genuine, like he actually cared whether I lived. But the motor revved, and that was that. I floated on my back, lungs burning, dress clinging to me like a shroud. Somewhere deep inside, a small, furious thought surfaced. If I die out here, I die telling the truth to no one. I spotted something, a smudge of orange far away, a light, maybe another boat, maybe just the sun teasing me. I turned toward it anyway, arms slicing through the freezing surf. Voices. Rough. Urgent. "Holy hell, Grandpa! There's somebody out there!" Two shadows leaned over the side of a weather-worn fishing vessel. A rope hit the water. I grabbed it, every muscle shaking. Hands pulled me up, one calloused, one young. "Easy, easy," the older man said. "You're all right now." The deck smelled like salt, diesel, and coffee gone cold. I collapsed, coughing up half the Atlantic. Jake Morrison introduced himself with the quiet authority of someone used to bad days on the water. His grandson, Tyler, couldn't have been more than 17, face pale beneath his hoodie. "Ma'am, what happened? Boat capsize?" "My family," I managed, teeth chattering so hard the words came in pieces. "They pushed me." Jake and Tyler exchanged a look. "Let's get her below," Jake said finally. "Warm first, questions later." They wrapped me in a blanket that smelled like motor oil and wool. The boat's small cabin rattled as Tyler throttled toward shore. Jake handed me a dented thermos. "Coffee. Not fancy, but it'll put fire back in you." The burn down my throat felt like proof of life. "You said your family pushed you?" he asked gently. "Yes." He waited. "For the money," I added, voice cracking. $3 billion, apparently. Jake gave a low whistle. "Ma'am, if that's true, you need the Coast Guard. Police." "No," I said sharply. "Not yet. If they know I'm alive, they'll finish what they started." He studied me for a long time, eyes the color of wet slate. "You in trouble, but not the kind that gets fixed by rules." "Exactly." He nodded once, decision made. "All right. You never got on this boat. Understand?" I did, and for the first time since the shove, I felt something like control. Jake knew a woman who ran a small bed and breakfast on the outskirts of Gloucester. Cash only, no questions. By the time we docked, Dawn had peeled the night open like a bruise. Mrs. Chen answered the door in slippers, hair in curlers, expression unimpressed. "Jake Morrison, you better not be dragging trouble through my kitchen again." "Not trouble," Jake said. "Just a woman who needs a place to stay off the books." Her eyes flicked over me, drenched dress, trembling hands, the look of someone halfway between grief and fury. "Fine, towels in the back." "Coffee's fresh. I'll add it to Jake's tab." The warmth of her kitchen hit like sunlight. Steam from the kettle fogged the window where the sea glimmered beyond. Mrs. Chen slid a bowl of chicken broth in front of me. "Eat, then talk." When I finished, she folded her arms. "So, why they want you dead?" "For convenience," I said. "I'm the only thing between them and a fortune." She grunted. "Greedy kids been killing parents since Cain and Abel. Difference is, you still breathing. Use it." Jake returned that evening with a newspaper. Front page, "Widow of Tech, magnate lost at sea." There was my face, the same one on 1,000 family Christmas cards, smiling, gullible. The article quoted David. Mom had been confused lately. We worried about her sailing alone. Vanessa, photographed crying, added, "She was forgetful. We tried to protect her." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that startled even me. They're already rewriting history. Mrs. Chen placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then you rewrite it back." I spent the next hour listing names on a yellow legal pad. Lawyer, accountant, financial advisor. Everyone who'd touched my estate since Robert's death. Jake watched me work. "What exactly are you planning?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I do know what not to do. Die quietly." He leaned back, smiling for the first time. Good answer." By morning, Mrs. Chen had outfitted me in borrowed jeans, a flannel shirt, and boots that didn't fit, but made me look less like a missing billionaire and more like a tired tourist. She handed me a wallet. "Driver's license says you're Margaret Ellis. Middle name for good luck." I stared at the laminated card. Same face, new life. "Why are you helping me?" "Because somebody once helped me when I was running." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. Jake offered his hand. "You've got people who want you dead, and people who think you already are." "That's leverage. Use it." I squeezed his rough fingers. "I will." That night, lying in a borrowed bed under a crocheted blanket, I replayed every detail. Vanessa's whisper, David's hollow eyes, the cold bite of the ocean. Outside, the waves kept their rhythm against the rocks, steady, patient, eternal. If the sea had wanted me dead, it would have taken me. Instead, it had carried me to strangers who still believed in decency. In the dark, I whispered to the ceiling, "You tried to erase me, David, but you just gave me the cleanest slate of my life." The screen fades to black over the sound of surf and ticking clock. By sunrise, the world believed I was gone. And that gave me something worth more than all the money they wanted, time to make them pay. When I woke the next morning, sunlight pooled across the floral quilt like it didn't know someone had died in that bed, at least according to the newspapers. Mrs. Chen was already in the kitchen, frying something that smelled like garlic and eggs. The TV on her counter blared the local morning news, and I heard my own name before I'd even reached the doorway. "Authorities continue searching for 67-year-old Margaret Harrison, presumed drowned after a boating accident off the Massachusetts coast." The anchor's voice was smooth, professional, indifferent. Then they showed my photo, smiling at a charity gala 2 years ago, hairstyled, pearls shining. Underneath, the caption read, beloved philanthropist, struggling with early onset dementia, lost at sea. My hand tightened on the chair back. Early onset dementia, I repeated. That's new. Mrs. Chen turned off the stove. They making you sound pitiful, she said flatly. Pitiful makes people stop asking questions, I murmured. Jake came in from the porch, holding a folded newspaper. You might want to sit down for this. Front page, the Boston Ledger, dated that morning. Headline: Family mourns tragic loss of local businesswoman. The article quoted both David and Vanessa. Mom had been confused lately, David said. We tried to limit her travel, but she was stubborn. She wanted to celebrate being healthy again. We just hope she's at peace, Vanessa added tearfully. She wasn't herself these last few months. There was even a sidebar about the Margaret Harrison Foundation, apparently now temporarily under review, pending new trustees. Look at that, I said, voice shaking, but not from grief. They didn't even wait 24 hours to start consolidating power. Jake whistled low. They're rewriting your life faster than the obituaries can print. I sat down, staring at the article, my own smiling face staring back like a stranger. The photo credit said, Vanessa Harrison via Family Archives. Of course, she'd picked it. She'd controlled every word. And she'd even chosen a picture that made me look vacant, distant. An image of someone halfway gone already. That night, I borrowed Mrs. Chen's old laptop. It was slow, whirring like a plane about to take off, but it worked. I typed my own name into the search bar. Thousands of results. Mourners gather at emotional service. Community remembers generous widow. Family requests donations to the Alzheimer's Association in lieu of flowers. I clicked one article from the Globe. There was my obituary, polished and final. Margaret Harrison, 67, of Boston, passed away tragically in a boating accident while celebrating her recovery from surgery. She is survived by her devoted son, David, and his loving wife, Vanessa. I scrolled, reading every word of my own death. My stomach turned cold. Vanessa had given interviews. David had stood beside her, solemn, hand on her shoulder. The camera caught a perfect tear tracing his cheek. I wondered if he'd practiced it. Then, photos from the wake. My friends from the garden club, the charity board, my neighbor Eleanor, red-eyed and holding tissues. None of them knew the casket was empty. Mrs. Chen poured tea and set it beside me without speaking. The way she looked at me, I realized she'd seen this kind of grief before, the kind that burns clean through fear. Let them grieve, she said finally. While you get ready. Ready for what? For whatever comes next. 2 days later, Jake parked his pickup on a small hill overlooking St. Augustine Cemetery. From there, we had a perfect view of the funeral, without being seen. Through binoculars, I watched a crowd gather around a polished mahogany coffin that contained nothing but flowers and air. David and Vanessa stood in matching black. He looked the part of a grieving son, head bowed. Vanessa dabbed her eyes delicately with a lace handkerchief, probably designer. But it wasn't their performance that got to me. It was everyone else. Eleanor, my next-door neighbor, sobbing openly. Dr. Peterson, the surgeon who'd replaced my hip, looking downcast. Even our former maid, Nora, standing near the back, clutching a single white rose. They all looked genuinely heartbroken. They thought I'd drowned. And David and Vanessa were feeding off that sympathy, like parasites. Jake muttered, I've seen some low things on the ocean, but this beats any shark I've ever met. I forced myself to stay detached, scanning the faces instead of the emotions. Something was missing. 3 people, actually. Richard Barnes, my financial advisor. Patricia Walsh, my attorney. Michael Torres, my accountant. None of them were there. I lowered the binoculars. The people who handle my money and legal affairs didn't show up to my funeral. You know why? Jake frowned. Because they already know you're not dead? Or because they helped plan it? Back at Mrs. Chen's, I built a command center on her kitchen table. Newspapers, notes, a spiral notebook. Jake brought his old fishing map so I could trace where the yacht had gone. We plotted everything: location, timing, motives. I drew a triangle between 3 names: Barnes, Walsh, and Torres. At the center, I wrote one word in red ink: motive. Barnes managed my investment accounts, I said. Walsh wrote my will. Torres handled my taxes. That's every entry point into my financial world. Jake leaned in, chewing thoughtfully on a toothpick. If someone wanted to steal everything, they'd need 1 insider. Maybe more. Exactly. And David's too lazy to orchestrate all this himself. Vanessa might be ruthless enough, but not smart enough to cover the legal trail. So they had help. Yes, I said softly. And whoever helped them is still out there. I pulled up another tab on the laptop, searching for recent changes in my estate filings. Mrs. Chen hovered over my shoulder. You can see that online? In Massachusetts, everything's public record if you know where to look. Within minutes, I found it. Petition for probate, the estate of Margaret Harrison. Filed Monday, 9:12 a.m., filed by David Harrison, executor. He hadn't wasted a single sunrise. But something else caught my eye. Attached to the petition was a scanned document labeled Last Will and Testament, dated May 2022. That wasn't my will. I'd updated mine in December 2023. I clicked to open it. The PDF loaded slowly, line by line, like a ghost revealing itself. Every clause was wrong. It left everything, the companies, the trust, the properties, to David Harrison, for the purpose of ensuring the well-being of his immediate family and any future heirs. I had never written those words. Mrs. Chen gasped. They forged it. I zoomed in on the signature. It was mine, but it wasn't. The pen pressure, the slant, close, but too perfect, too mechanical. Probably traced or scanned. Jake swore softly. That's a whole new level of evil. I printed a copy on Mrs. Chen's dusty old inkjet printer. The paper came out streaked, but legible. This, I said, is my first piece of evidence. Jake had a friend who ran a small local radio show, the kind that specialized in strange stories of the sea. He lent us a handheld recorder. We tested it that night. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Name, Jake prompted. Margaret Harrison, born April 6th, 1957. And why are you recording this? Because if anything happens to me again, I want proof that I was of sound mind, clear memory, and very much alive. I listed everything: dates, transactions, the surgery, the yacht, the betrayal. The sound of my own calm voice narrating my near death made it feel like someone else's story. When we finished, Jake tucked the recorder into a tackle box beneath coils of fishing line. There, he said, safe until you're ready to fight. 2 nights later, I couldn't sleep. Rain hammered the tin roof, the kind of storm that shakes loose whatever's hiding inside you. I got up, made coffee, and opened my notebook. On one page, I'd drawn the triangle of suspects again. Beneath it, I added new notes. Vanessa's video, potential blackmail evidence, fake medical files, maybe at Dr. Peterson's office. Missing lawyer Patricia Walsh, likely in contact with David. Each item felt like a match, waiting for a spark. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, robe wrapped tight. You planning to storm the castle? I'm planning to walk through the front door, I said. Quietly. She sat down. You sure you ready for that? I've been underestimated my whole life. It's time to make that a weapon. Jake drove me out to a secluded overlook where the city lights blinked across the harbor. Tomorrow, he said, you'll be back in their world. They think you're a ghost. Use that. I looked at the dark silhouette of the city that used to be my home. Every glimmer of light felt like a lie someone was telling about me. I'm not a ghost, I said. I'm the storm that comes after one. Jake chuckled. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Too late, I said. You already saved me. He tipped his hat, half grin, half warning. Just remember, storms can drown too. Back at Mrs. Chen's, I packed a small bag, flashlight, gloves, the recorder, and a disposable camera Jake found in a drawer. Before I left the kitchen, I tore the newspaper headline from the front page. Prominent widow lost at sea. I folded it and slid it into my pocket. Let them have their funeral. I had an investigation to attend. As I stepped out into the rain, the wind caught my hair, and the smell of the ocean hit me. Cold, briny, familiar. They think they buried me, I whispered. Tomorrow, I dig them up. Boston slept beneath a misty drizzle as Jake's old pickup crept down the narrow brick streets of Beacon Hill. Gas lamps glowed dimly, puddles shimmering like black glass. It was past midnight, quiet enough that even the wind seemed to whisper secrets. From the passenger seat, I stared at the familiar brownstone 2 blocks away. My house, my life, embalmed in silence. Jake cut the engine. You sure you want to do this tonight? If I wait, they'll move the evidence, I said, pulling on latex gloves. He didn't argue. Just handed me a flashlight the size of a baton. Keep this off till you're inside. And if things go sideways, don't be a hero. Too late for that, I murmured. I slipped out of the truck, keeping low against the shadows. The rain slicked the cobblestones, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The iron gate squealed softly when I opened it. Same sound it made when Robert used to come home late from the office. That ache in my chest was sharp and fast, but I pushed it down. This wasn't nostalgia. It was reconnaissance. The back door key had been hanging on my keychain for decades. David never asked for it after I moved out, and I never thought to give it up. The lock clicked open like it still recognized me. The house smelled different. Expensive candles, new leather, and something faintly metallic underneath, like sterile air. The kind of smell that doesn't belong to a home. I stepped into the kitchen, the flashlight still off. Streetlight leaked through the blinds, silvering the marble countertops. Everything gleamed too perfectly, too recently cleaned. I used to cook here. Robert and I once burned Thanksgiving turkey in that oven. Now, the fridge hummed quietly. New, high-end. I opened it. Fresh fruit. Champagne. Imported cheese. Nobody keeps perishable food in an empty house. They were still living here, or using it as their secret base. I made my way down the hallway, careful to avoid the boards that creaked. My hip twinged with every step, a cruel reminder of how close they'd come to finishing the job. Robert's old study door was closed. I paused, listening. Nothing. Just the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. I turned the knob. The study hit me like a ghost. Same oak desk, same globe bar, same wall of books, but overlaid with foreign objects, Vanessa's minimalist touch. Silver vases, chrome lamp, and on the desk, a stack of papers with my name on them. I turned on the flashlight, keeping the beam tight. The top sheet read, Project Margaret, Phase 3, Implementation. My stomach clenched. The next page was a detailed timeline. Doctor visits, prescription changes, dates of confused behavior. Each item annotated neatly in Vanessa's handwriting. May 3rd, forgot her purse at restaurant. David prompted topic. June 10th, mixed up medication, verified by Dr. Peterson. July 2nd, failed to recall neighbor's name, captured on video. I remembered every one of those moments. None were accidents. They were staged, setups. The medication mix-up? Vanessa had handed me the wrong pill bottles herself. The confusion at dinner? They'd distracted me while filming under the table. They'd been building a false narrative of dementia for over a year. I flipped deeper into the folder, heart pounding. A new section labeled Phase 3, Termination Strategy. Typed beneath were bullet points. Ensure signed POA is on file. Coordinate with MT for final estate transfer. Death certificate draft prepared. Boating accident template. Press release to be distributed within 6 hours. And scrawled in pen at the bottom, if complications arise, proceed with contingency. MTMT. The same initials from my earlier notes. I'd found the puppet master. But the next page froze me completely. A letter addressed to David Harrison, signed Miranda Torres, partner, Morrison Torres and Associates. David, the timeline needs to be accelerated. Your mother's begun asking questions about the POA. If she retains independent counsel, the structure collapses. Proceed with Phase 3 within 2 weeks. Ensure Vanessa manages optics. I'll finalize the legal cleanup afterward. Reading those words was like feeling the push all over again. I photographed everything with Jake's disposable camera, hands trembling. Each click sounded deafening in the silence. I was tucking the last document back into place when a sound cut through the stillness. A cry. Soft, high-pitched. A baby. It came from upstairs. I froze, every nerve alight. David and Vanessa never mentioned children. They'd always said they weren't ready. The crying grew louder, rhythmic, real. Against every instinct screaming run, I crept toward the staircase. Halfway up, I saw the faint blue glow of a nightlight from a room at the end of the hall. Children's wallpaper, whales and stars, a crib. Inside, a baby lay kicking beneath a mobile, wrapped in a designer blanket that probably cost more than Jake's boat. On the dresser sat framed photos. David and Vanessa holding the infant, smiling for the camera. But I noticed something off. In every picture, Vanessa wore the same oversized coat or scarf, covering her midsection. No pregnancy glow, no hospital band, and the dates. Each photo time-stamped only days apart, all too soon after my death. I stepped closer, the flashlight trembling in my grip. Beside the crib lay a small folder stamped Whitmore Reproductive Services. My throat went dry. I flipped it open, medical invoices, surrogate contracts, confidentiality agreements, and one birth certificate. Baby Harrison, born 3 weeks ago. Mother, Vanessa Harrison. Father, David Harrison. Impossible. I'd seen Vanessa on the yacht less than a week ago in a swimsuit, flat-stomached. She hadn't given birth to anyone. The baby gurgled softly, unaware of the darkness woven around his existence. I whispered, "Who are you, little one?" The baby blinked up at me, calm now, as if recognizing a truth none of us wanted to say. A car door slammed outside. Voices. The front door unlocked. My blood went cold. David's voice drifted up the stairs, casual but tense. I told you we shouldn't have stayed so long at the lawyer's. Vanessa replied sharply, Relax. Everything's under control. By Monday, we'll have full access. I turned off the flashlight, heart thundering. Footsteps crossed the living room. I could hear the faint click of her heels. They were heading for the study. I backed into the nursery's shadow, pressing against the wall. The baby stirred, whimpered. I froze, praying he wouldn't cry. From below came muffled conversation. MT says the filings went through, Vanessa said. By the end of next week, the estate transfers are locked. And Mom? David's voice cracked slightly. Let's not get sentimental now. I slipped out of the nursery, moving down the back hallway, careful to avoid the squeaky step I'd hated for 30 years. Their voices grew clearer as I passed the landing. We need to finalize the child's documentation before Monday, Vanessa was saying. Don't call him the child, David muttered. Then what do you want to call him? Our future? My hand tightened on the banister. They weren't just killing for money. They were building an heir to justify it. I reached the back door just as headlights swept across the windows. Someone else was arriving, another car pulling into the driveway. Vanessa's tone changed instantly. Who's that? I don't know, David said, moving toward the door. Probably the attorney again. I ducked into the narrow side garden, crouching behind the rose bushes I'd planted 20 years ago. Their thorns snagged my sleeve, drawing blood, but I barely noticed. A third voice joined theirs, female, confident. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, she said. We need to discuss next week's transition quietly. Even through the rain, I recognized that voice from the letter. Miranda Torres, the lawyer who'd signed my death warrant. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I didn't need to. The aura was unmistakable. Cold precision wrapped in charm. They led her inside, and I used the distraction to slip down the alley toward the street. Behind me, muffled conversation floated out through the rain. Miranda. Your mother's assets will transfer cleanly once the final certification is filed. But make sure no one sees inconsistencies in the medical reports. She was declared incompetent. We can't risk any loose ends. Vanessa. There aren't any. She's gone. Miranda. Good. Then congratulations, Mr. Harrison. You're officially rich. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, their silhouettes glowed through the curtain. 3 figures standing around the same desk where Robert once signed our first business deal. Something inside me hardened completely. Jake was waiting 3 blocks away, engine idling. When I climbed in, soaked and shaking, he didn't ask questions right away. Well, he finally said. They didn't just try to kill me, I whispered. They replaced me, and they bought a baby to finish the illusion. His jaw tightened. Jesus! And I found her, the one behind it all, Miranda Torres. She was there tonight. Jake slammed his hand against the steering wheel. Then we've got our shark. I pulled the camera from my bag. And I've got the bait. The flash from the photos was still imprinted in my eyes. The documents, the nursery, the birth certificate, the letter with her signature. Tomorrow, I said, voice steady now. We find out exactly who Miranda Torres is. Closing line, transition to next chapter. As the truck rolled away from the street that used to be home, I looked back through the rain-smeared window. The lights were still on in the study. 3 shadows moved inside, plotting, confident, unaware that their ghost had just broken in and stolen their secrets. They think they've written my ending, I whispered. Time to edit the script. By dawn, I had a plan and a pounding heart. I needed answers. Not whispers, not guesses. Proof. Mrs. Chen brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to peel paint while Jake dialed a number from an old business card. Guy's discreet, he said. Former cop. Owes me a favor. By noon, we were sitting across from Danny Crawford in a cramped office above a sandwich shop in downtown Gloucester. He looked like he'd been born suspicious. Gray hair, sharp eyes, and a tie that hadn't been loosened since the 1990s. So, Danny said after I told him everything, you're dead on paper, your son's forging your will, and someone named Miranda Torres seems to be pulling the strings. That's right, I said. And there's a baby who isn't theirs. He leaned back, the chair creaking. All right, Mrs. Harrison. Let's find out where he came from. 2 days later, Danny spread a series of photos across Mrs. Chen's kitchen table. Each one was a surveillance shot. David and Vanessa walking into a modern glass building, discreetly labeled Whitmore Reproductive Services. Private fertility clinic outside Boston, Danny explained. Very exclusive. Clients pay in cash to stay anonymous. My stomach turned. Surrogacy. Exactly. They set up closed arrangements. No records accessible without court orders. But my contact inside says a couple matching your son's description paid for a full surrogacy package 8 months ago. Cash. Fake names. He pushed forward a photo of a sleek black Mercedes in the clinic's parking lot. Vanity plate, VH04. Vanessa Harrison. They even used their initials, Jake said. Arrogant fools. Danny had tracked down a nurse who'd worked a short stint at Whitmore before quitting suddenly. Her name was Janine Ross, and she agreed to meet us after hours in the back booth of a diner near the harbor. She arrived nervous, clutching a cup of tea like a lifeline. I shouldn't be talking to you, she said. They make you sign NDAs thicker than Bibles. You're not the one on trial here, Danny told her gently. Just tell us what you saw. She hesitated, then said, About 8 months ago, a teenage girl came in, Sarah Collins. 17, pregnant through one of Whitmore's programs. They said she was a donor surrogate, whatever that means. But I remember thinking she was too young, too scared. Did she have family? I asked. She said no, from Maine, a runaway. She just wanted the baby to go to a good home. Janine's eyes filled with tears. She died during delivery. They said it was cardiac arrest, but she was healthy, laughing with me 15 minutes before it happened. What happened to the baby? They told us the adoptive parents took him immediately, couple from Boston. Very wealthy. The paperwork was already waiting. I closed my eyes. David and Vanessa. They hadn't just bought a baby. They'd taken him from a dead girl who never knew she'd been murdered for her womb. The next morning, Danny called. Got something big. Meet me. We drove back into the city, following him into a parking garage beneath a law office tower. He opened the trunk of his car, revealing a locked case. Inside were scanned copies of documents he'd pulled from a Whitmore employee's computer. Each page made my pulse quicken. Surrogacy contract. 4587. Client. Mr. and Mrs. D. Harrison. Payment confirmation, $450,000 in cash. Birth certificate template. Mother, Vanessa Harrison. Father, David Harrison. Internal memo. MT approval required before release of infant. MT again, Jake muttered. Miranda Torres. Danny nodded. She's not just their lawyer. She's part owner of Whitmore. Silent partner through a shell company. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the memo. The same elegant initials I'd seen on the Phase 3 letter. Miranda Torres wasn't cleaning up after crimes. She was orchestrating them. Mrs. Chen spread the documents across her dining table like a jigsaw puzzle. "Explain it to me," she said. "Why they need the baby?" "Optics," I replied. "If they inherit $3 billion and have an infant heir, it legitimizes the estate. A loving young family continuing the Harrison legacy. Perfect for press, perfect for probate." Danny added, "Plus the forged will mentions future children. Having one validates the fake document. So the baby makes the crime believable," Jake said quietly. "An accessory with a pacifier." That evening, I sat alone on Mrs. Chen's porch, the sea whispering below. I thought about Sarah Collins, 17, alone, lured by promises of money and kindness. She died so my son could fake a family. I took out the newspaper clipping from my pocket. "Prominent widow lost at sea." Underneath it, I wrote in red ink, "She wasn't the only one." For the first time, my revenge felt less like anger and more like justice. Danny's contact arranged a consultation appointment under a fake name. I went as his aunt, gray wig and all. Whitmore Reproductive Services looked like a hotel lobby. Marble floors, soft music, diffused light. Behind the reception desk, a woman smiled with robotic warmth. "Welcome to Whitmore. How may we help you build your family?" I smiled back. "By learning how you built someone else's." The receptionist blinked. "I don't understand." Danny cut in smoothly. "We're here to see Dr. Winston about case 4587. He's expecting us." Within minutes, we were escorted into a private office where a polished man in a designer suit greeted us. He was mid-50s, expensively tanned, confidence oozing from every pore. "Mr. Crawford, Mrs. Ellis," he said, using our aliases. "How can I help you?" Danny slid a document across the desk. "We're interested in how this surrogate died." Dr. Winston froze just long enough to betray recognition. "That information is confidential." "Not anymore," I said. "Especially when the surrogate was a minor who died under your care." His eyes flicked to me, narrowing. "And you are?" "The woman whose fortune paid for your silence." That rattled him. He looked at the folder again. The memo with Miranda Torres's initials. And his voice dropped. "You don't know what you're involved in," he said. "These people don't make mistakes. They make examples." "Then maybe it's time they made one out of me," I replied. He stood, agitated. "You should leave." "If Miranda finds out you're alive?" "She already will," Danny said, handing him a card. "Federal Investigative Services. You call this number when you're ready to make a deal." We walked out before the panic in his eyes turned to denial. Back at the B&B, Danny was waiting by the phone. It rang just after midnight. He put it on speaker. "It's Winston," the voice whispered. "She owns everything. Miranda Torres funded Whitmore through a Delaware corporation called MT Holdings. She selects families with wealthy relatives, sets up surrogacies that align with their inheritance timelines. If the elderly relative dies, the family inherits and she gets a cut. If they hesitate, she accelerates the process." "You didn't hear this from me." Click. Silence filled the room. Mrs. Chen crossed herself. "Accelerates the process," she repeated. "She kills them." "Professionally," Danny said. "Looks like natural causes every time." Jake slammed his fist on the table. "So that's it? We just sit here while they keep doing it?" "No," I said quietly. "We end it." The next morning, I watched the baby sleep in Carol Peterson's arms, the nurse Danny had found through Whitmore's staff list. She'd been hired to care for him in my former home, unaware of the truth. "He's perfect," she whispered. "Sweet boy, but they never touch him. They just take pictures." I told her everything, Sarah's story, the forgeries, the network. Tears filled her eyes. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Keep him safe," I said, "until we can make this public." She nodded slowly. "Then you have my word." As I looked down at the child, Sarah's child, a new feeling stirred beneath the anger, responsibility. He was the innocent thread connecting every sin in this story, and I was the only one left to protect him. That night, the four of us sat around Mrs. Chen's kitchen table, our faces lit by the blue glow of Danny's laptop. "Miranda's careful," he said. "She never uses email. Everything's faxed or hand-delivered. But I found a pattern. She's scheduled to meet David and Vanessa tomorrow to finalize the estate transfer." "Then that's our window," I said. "I want her talking when the authorities are listening." Danny smiled. "I can make that happen. But you'll need to be in the room to bait her." Mrs. Chen looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You're walking into a lion's den." "Not walking," I said. "Resurrecting." Jake grinned. "She means to haunt them for real." I folded the Whitmore documents into an envelope, sealed it, and wrote across the front, "For delivery. Torres meeting." Tomorrow, my ghost would knock on their door. As the first light of morning broke over the Atlantic, I stood on Mrs. Chen's porch with Jake. The wind smelled of salt and retribution. "They thought they were buying a future," I said, watching the sun rise. "But all they did was birth their own downfall." Jake nodded. "Then let's deliver the baby to justice." Morning bled into a pewter noon as the city shook off its fog. Danny parked across from a glass and granite tower where Morrison, Torres, and Associates kept their floors gleaming and their hands ostensibly clean. From the passenger seat, I watched paralegals swarm through the revolving door like bees around a queen. "Timing?" Danny asked. 11:45, I said, checking the watch Robert gave me on our 20th anniversary. "The messenger knocks at 11:47. He smiled. "You always did like precision." Across the street, David and Vanessa hurried toward the lobby, dressed in expensive grief, tailored black, polished shoes. Vanessa's sunglasses were so large they swallowed half her face. David's jaw worked as if he were chewing through guilt and finding it too tough to swallow. "Remember," Danny said, handing me a burner phone, "we're observers until she says something incriminating we can capture later." This is just the first ghost. A bike courier coasted into view, brakes squeaking, a white envelope clipped to the back of his satchel. He asked security for Torres by name. Moments later, the guard waved him through. 11:47, I murmured. A minute stretched into a lifetime. Then, the tower's doors blew open. Vanessa first, blanching under daylight, David behind her, and, last, Miranda Torres, eyes narrowed, steps short and rapid, as if dignity were something she wore like heels, elegant but not built for sprinting. "What did you send them?" Danny asked, though he'd read the card. I didn't take my eyes off the trio. "Something simple." Inside the envelope, heavy stock, my monogram embossed, was a note. "David, Vanessa, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. We should talk. Love, Mom. P.S. Give my regards to little Robert Sarah. He's beautiful." A signature they had tried to bury, blooming like a bruise across white paper. Across the street, Torres yanked David into a doorway, mouth moving fast. Vanessa kept scanning the sidewalks as if I might materialize out of the brick. For the first time since the Atlantic went black, I enjoyed a long, steady breath. "The dead speak," Danny said softly, "and the living panic." At noon, I rang the bell of the house that used to be mine. Carol Peterson opened the door with a bottle in one hand and doubt in her eyes. News had made me a ghost. Seeing me made her look like she'd seen one. "You," she started. "I know," I said gently. "It's a lot. May I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Somewhere deeper in the house, the baby cooed, a sound so small it barely touched the air and still managed to undo me. "I'm Margaret," I said, placing a folder on the marble console. "The woman they said drowned, and I believe you've been caring for my grandson." Her face softened. "They told me you were gone. They told everyone that." I slid the folder open. Photos, contracts. The Whitmore memo initialed MT, a copy of Sarah Collins's chart. "I need you to understand what they bought and what it cost." We sat on the edge of a sofa I had once chosen for comfort, now repurposed for staging. I talked fast and clean, the way truth sometimes demands. Whitmore's cash deal, the pre-prepared birth certificate, the girl from Maine who deserved a future and got a toe tag. Carol's hand flew to her mouth. "I didn't know," she whispered. I thought they were just private." "Privacy is a window shade," I said. "This is a locked cellar." The baby stirred in his bouncy seat, eyes finding mine the way children somehow do, through noise, through lies, through distance. He studied my face with quiet seriousness, and I felt my resolve harden into something diamond clear. "Will you help me?" I asked. "Document everything, feeding times, instructions they give you, who comes, what they say. This little one is more than evidence, but he is evidence. And we will keep him safe." Carol nodded, wiping at tears. "What do I call him?" I swallowed. "Until a judge says otherwise, call him what he is. Robert Sarah, for the grandfather they tried to erase, and the girl who gave him life." She smiled through the ache. "Yes, ma'am." I stood to leave. "Keep your routine. If they ask, you never saw me." On the threshold, I added, "Lock the basement door. If anything feels wrong, take the back stair and go. Don't wait." "Where to?" "Mrs. Chen's," I said. We'll be ready." By late afternoon, the city had a new roomer. A woman who looked exactly like the widow lost at sea had been spotted in Beacon Hill, headscarf tied, walking briskly with purpose that didn't belong to ghosts. We didn't post a photo. We didn't need to. People did that for us. Grainy street cam clips, a reflection in a shop window, a Ring doorbell still where a silhouette paused and turned. In each frame, the figure was just blurred enough to deny, just clear enough to dread. Danny monitored chatter from his office, screens casting blue across his face. "They're calling it a hoax, then a miracle, then a conspiracy. The third one's where Torres lives." "Good," I said. "Let her feel hunted by her own narrative." He looked at me over the monitors. "You're enjoying this." "I'm breathing," I corrected. "And that feels unfamiliar." Scene 4, the phone call. The burner rang at 5:12 p.m., a number I didn't recognize, voice I would have known in a hurricane. "Mom?" For a second, the world slid, decades collapsing into a boy with scraped knees asking if we could stop for ice cream. I gripped the counter. "David." He swallowed audibly. "You're alive." "That's the rumor." Why wouldn't you? Because my son pushed me into the Atlantic and drove away. Silence. Then, Vanessa. She isn't the one who called me mom for 37 years. My voice was iron. Listen carefully. You will not call the clinic. You will not call Torres. You will not touch the baby without the nurse present. You will meet me tomorrow at noon. Where? Where we used to be honest, I said. The public garden, the bench by the bridge. Come alone. He exhaled. Mom, please? Tomorrow, I repeated and killed the call. Danny raised an eyebrow. Public? Witnesses are safety, I said, and fear makes people talk. Boston's public garden holds memories like a careful librarian. Quiet, meticulous, unforgiving if you dog-ear the page. I chose a bench with a view of the swan boats and the little bridge where I told David at 9 that his father would miss a school play because big deals sometimes happen on Wednesdays. He had forgiven that. I never should have asked him to. He was already there, hands jammed in pockets, eyes flicking from my face to the water and back, as if the pond might swallow me again. You look... He trailed. Alive sat on his tongue and went unsaid. You look like your father when he'd lost control of a meeting, I said. Like you're trying to smile the room into compliance. He sat. I never meant... You meant it, I said simply. Maybe not at first, but intent becomes habit, and habit becomes character. He flinched. Torres said, Torres is a wolf in a power suit, and you handed her a map to our house. We watched a child toss bread to ducks, her mittened hand decisive. Do you know her name? I asked. He blinked. Whose? Sarah, the 17-year-old who carried your heir. She died so you could fake a family. Say her name. He stared at the water, voice breaking. Sarah. Good. Remember it when the prosecutors ask you why? Mom, I was drowning. He choked out a laugh without humor. Debt, Vanessa's business. I thought, if we could just accelerate my death? I said, gentle as sandpaper. You were not drowning, David. You were diving for treasure. He scrubbed a hand over his face. What do you want me to do? Choose, I said. Before Torres chooses for you. She cleans loose ends. His head snapped toward me. Cleans? Don't pretend you didn't know the word. He swallowed. If I talk, if you don't, I will. And the only thing worse than facing her wrath is surviving it and still having to live with yourself. He looked 13 again, lost and furious at the same time. Are you going to forgive me? Forgiveness isn't a lever I pull to make you humane, I said. Be humane first. Then we'll see what's left. We sat in the winter light until his shoulders lowered a notch. Surrender or relief? I couldn't tell. He stood. Noon tomorrow? Where? Home, I said. Bring nothing but your courage. Night fell fast. We had hours to build a battlefield that looked like a living room. At Mrs. Chen's kitchen table, the plan unfolded like a heist drawn on napkins. Carol would keep the baby in the back of the house, ready to slip down the old servant's stairs if voices became violence. Danny would seed microphones, smoke detector, lamp base, book spine, so clean they'd pick up breath. Jake would wait outside in the truck, engine warm, in case we needed to disappear. I would sit in my favorite armchair with the recorder in my pocket and the past on my side. Torres will come, Danny said. Control is her religion. A risen victim is sacrilege. And David? Mrs. Chen asked. David will follow the loudest voice, I said. I'm going to make sure it's mine. We moved through the house like stagehands between acts. Danny's fingers were deft, tucking black dots beneath the lip of a mantle, inside the hollow of a ceramic vase. He tested a feed in his car outside. A whisper came back full and crisp. "Say something," he called over the line. I looked into the dark glass of the window and spoke to my reflection. "My name is Margaret Harrison, and I am not dead." The words rang in the room like a bell. Just before midnight, I stood in the foyer and breathed in the air of a home that had been stripped of its soul and reupholstered with deceit. Carol pressed the baby to her shoulder, swaying in that ancient rhythm mothers know without learning. "Are you sure?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm ready." She smiled like the brave do, small, tight, honest. "I'll be in the back." I walked into the living room and lowered myself into Robert's armchair. The leather creaked in a familiar way, a sound I had once associated with stories read aloud and the clink of ice in summer glasses. I placed an envelope on the coffee table, copies of the documents I wanted them to see, with the ones I didn't tucked just out of reach. Outside, a car door closed, then another, voices. Footsteps on stone. Jake's text flashed on the burner. "They're here." I glanced at the mantel clock. 11:59. "Lights?" Danny whispered in my earbud. "Leave them on," I said. "Resurrections deserve good lighting." The front door opened. Hinges sighed. 2 silhouettes entered, one careful, one predatory. I kept my eyes on the doorway and let my voice carry, calm as a tide. "Hello, darlings," I said. "Miss me?" The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 12, each chime slicing through the silence like a blade through silk. I sat motionless in Robert's leather armchair, the throne of my former life, legs crossed, hands folded, expression composed. The living room smelled faintly of lemon polish and betrayal. The front door opened. Vanessa entered first, heels clicking on the parquet. David followed, pale and hollow-eyed. Behind them came Miranda Torres, tailored perfection in charcoal gray, a woman who moved like she owned gravity. Her gaze swept the room and landed on me. For a fraction of a second, her mask cracked, shock flickering like static. Then the smile returned, weapon sharp. "Well," I said, voice calm, "I was beginning to think I'd have to haunt you forever." Vanessa gasped, the sound torn from somewhere between terror and disbelief. David froze, mouth slightly open, as if words were a foreign language he'd forgotten. Only Torres managed a reply. "I must say, Mrs. Harrison," she murmured, "you're remarkably well for a dead woman." "Hydration and spite," I said. "They work wonders." David tried first. "Mom, we thought the Coast Guard looked for debris, not survivors," I interrupted. "It's remarkable what they don't find when no one actually reports a person overboard." He shut his mouth. Vanessa took a step forward. "You shouldn't be here." And yet, here I am, in my home. Surprising how ownership works when one isn't murdered properly. Torres tilted her head, studying me. "You've caused quite the inconvenience. You realize this changes nothing legally." "Actually, it changes everything morally," I said. And soon, legally as well." I gestured toward the coffee table, where copies of the forged will, Whitmore contracts, and birth records lay spread like tarot cards predicting doom. "Your handiwork, Miss Torres?" I asked sweetly. "You have a distinctive signature." From the hallway came a faint sound, soft, human, unmistakable, a baby's sigh. Torres's eyes flicked toward it. "Ah, yes, the child, the final prop in your son's inheritance theater." Vanessa bristled. He's our son. I stood, the old ache in my hip forgotten. Then tell me the date you gave birth, Vanessa. Tell me the name of the hospital, the doctor, the nurse. Tell me anything that's true. Vanessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence that followed was a confession all its own. You bought him, I said, through Whitmore, from a girl named Sarah Collins, 17, dead before she ever held her baby. David's voice cracked. We didn't know she'd... Stop! I snapped. Don't you dare finish that sentence with innocence. Miranda Torres crossed to the window, hands clasped behind her back like a lecturer before a class of slow students. You make it sound barbaric, she said. But truly, Mrs. Harrison, we provide symmetry. The old relinquish what they no longer use. The young receive what they need. Wealth, family, peace. It's a redistribution of purpose. Redistribution of corpses, I said. She smiled faintly. Semantics. Do you even hear yourself? Jake's voice buzzed faintly through my earbud from outside, recording every syllable. Torres went on, oblivious. Your death was supposed to be merciful, a clean ending for everyone. You'd lived a full life. Your son, your daughter-in-law, new blood, new direction. Now you ruin the narrative. I stepped closer. You mistake survival for defiance. I didn't ruin your narrative, Ms. Torres. I reclaimed the authorship. David's hands shook. Mom, please, just tell us what you want. I want my money back, I said evenly. I want Sarah Collins's name cleared, and I want every person you helped kill to be heard, even from the grave. Torres laughed softly. Idealism at your age? Touching. I met her gaze. At my age, I've buried enough people to know justice doesn't arrive uninvited. So I sent it an engraved invitation. Her brow furrowed. What are you... Do you hear that faint hum? I asked. No? That's the sound of every word you've spoken echoing into federal storage. Massachusetts allows one-party consent for recording. And I am the party. Vanessa's face drained of color. David sank onto the sofa like his bones had turned to water. You're bluffing, Torres said. Am I? I nodded toward the lamp. A tiny green light blinked once, deliberate and cruel. Her composure cracked for the first time. Sometimes monsters confess not out of guilt, but because they can't resist explaining their genius. You think you're the first? She hissed. There were 37 before you, each one grateful at the end. Peaceful, families restored, no scandal, just inheritance. She spoke faster, voice climbing. We were efficient, clean, and everyone benefited. You benefited, I said. Off their graves. Vanessa's whisper trembled. 37? Torres turned on her sharply. Do you think you're innocent, Mrs. Harrison Jr.? You signed the contracts. You filmed the evidence. You posed for the grieving photos. Vanessa stepped back, horrified. You told us... I told you what you wanted to hear. Torres snapped. You were amateurs with a rich mother and poor impulse control. David looked from one woman to the other, realization dawning that he was not an accomplice, but a pawn. You used us, he said. Of course I did, Torres said. That's what pawns are for. I let the silence stretch until it could be cut with a butter knife. Then I smiled. Thank you, Miranda. That was very eloquent. Federal agents love eloquence. Outside, sirens wailed, distant but rising, gaining form. Torres's head whipped toward the sound. You called the police? She hissed. Not the police, I said. People who outrank them. A crash of boots on gravel, shouted commands. The front door burst open as FBI agents flooded the foyer, weapons drawn but aimed low. Miranda Torres, one barked. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, elder abuse, and racketeering. Torres's cool finally shattered. She lunged for the kitchen, but an agent intercepted her mid-stride. Vanessa screamed. David just stared, frozen in a purgatory of disbelief. The room was chaos. Agents securing papers, radios crackling, the smell of adrenaline and polished wood mixing into something surreal. An agent I recognized, Special Agent Sarah Chen, Danny's secret liaison, approached, lowering her weapon. Mrs. Harrison, she said with a small smile. That was extremely dangerous and extremely effective. I've been called worse, I said. She nodded toward Torres, now cuffed and seething. 2-year investigation. Couldn't get her to talk. You got her to brag. Some people can't resist their own applause, I murmured. David rose shakily. Mom? I looked at him, really looked. The boy who once brought me daisies from the yard, now hollowed by greed and shame. Don't, I said quietly. Save it for the judge. Vanessa wept openly as an agent read her rights. The baby cried upstairs, a soft, confused sound. Carol appeared in the doorway, cradling him protectively. Is it over? She asked. I exhaled, feeling for the first time the weight leave my chest. Yes, I said. It's over. Torres was led past me, still smirking despite the cuffs. You think you've won, Mrs. Harrison? There will always be another me. Maybe, I said, but there won't be another me for you to kill. The agents took her away. The door closed behind them with a click that sounded like the world exhaling. Carol handed me the baby. He blinked up at me, small fist curling around my finger. For a moment, the house, this theater of deceit, felt human again. Jake stepped inside, grinning. Well, Margaret, that's one hell of a curtain call. Not curtain, I said, kissing the baby's forehead. Just intermission. There's a reason stories like this strike such a nerve. Because deep down, every one of us has wondered who we could trust if money ever entered the equation. Margaret Harrison's story isn't just about inheritance. It's about identity. She lost her wealth, her reputation, and almost her life. But what she gained was something her fortune could never buy. Clarity. In a world that measures value by net worth, she reminded us that integrity is the only asset that appreciates with time. David and Vanessa believed blood entitled them to everything, but Margaret proved that family isn't what you're born into. It's what you choose when everything else sinks. There's another message here, quieter but powerful. Vigilance. So many seniors lose their voices to paperwork and manipulation. Margaret's fight became a rallying cry for elder justice, for anyone whose trust was used against them. When she adopted baby Robert Sarah, she didn't just save a child. She rebuilt what family truly means: compassion without condition, love without agenda, legacy without greed. So if this story leaves you shaken, let it also leave you inspired to protect your truth, to speak up, and to remember, no amount of money is worth losing your soul or your name. If this story moved you, take a moment right now to hit like, share, and subscribe. It doesn't just help the channel. It keeps stories like Margaret's alive for the people who need to hear them. Comment below. What would you have done if you were in Margaret's place? Would you have gone to the police or disappeared and built your case in secret? your perspective might change how someone else sees justice. And if you want more real-life stories of courage, betrayal, and survival, check out tomorrow's episode, The Inheritance Heist. When the lawyer becomes the killer. Every view, every comment, every share helps us shine light on the truth behind the fiction. Because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that actually happened.